You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Jeff Lenard with NACS.
And I'm Carolyn Schnare, also with NACS. Jeff, over the last many episodes, we've talked a lot about hunger and how we can help in our communities, convenience stores, as individuals. And today we're going to hear about how we can help the 1 in 7 people in America who are facing hunger problems. Jeff, 1 in 7 Americans faces hunger problems in America, and it's something that convenience stores can do to help. And we're going to talk to Shelley O'Toole, the Senior Account Manager from Emerging Retail with Feeding America, who is joining us by phone today to tell us a little bit more about how we can get involved and what Feeding America does to help Americans. Thank you for joining us, Shelley.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here today.
I think one of the key things, Shelley, is when you hear about hunger in the U.S., and Carolyn was just citing the figures, 1 in 7, at the same time, there's enough food for everybody here. So the key thing is, how do we get food from where it is to where it needs to be? And that's the role that Feeding America plays. And that's the role that increasingly retailers are playing in helping and working with Feeding America. Can you tell us a little bit about the dynamics of how it all works and how it can work?
Absolutely. Well, Feeding America is the largest hunger relief organization in the United States. So we're fortunate that we have this vast network of 200 food banks nationwide, and they are connected to 60,000 food pantries and meal programs. So through this network, we provide meals to more than 46 million people each year. So I mentioned 200 member food banks, and you asked about how it works. Well, think of the food bank as the warehouse, the huge warehouse for millions of pounds of food and other products that go out to the community. So the food bank solicits, receives, inventories, and distributes donated food from C-stores, grocery stores, and agencies that directly serve those clients in need. And then the food agency receives the food from a member food bank, and think of them as functioning as the arms, reaching out to that community directly and distributing that food. And agencies are facilities such as schools, churches, food pantries, shelters, meal programs, and mobile food pantries. So you're probably familiar with agencies.
Yeah, and Carolyn and I have been to a couple of the food banks or the places where the food is, whether it's 3 Square or some of the others. The last few years, NACS has worked with Tyson Food in a protein delivery to our shows. And what's great at our shows, what's great is to meet the people at these places and just to see how important it is, because it is really a big issue, and it is really an issue that we can all play a little bit more of a role to make a difference.
That's true, and we talk about food insecure, and like you said, these are people that you've met, but people you probably know that you don't realize are food insecure. It could be a coworker, it could be an employee, it could be the senior citizen that lives next door to you and is on a fixed income and has to decide whether they're going to purchase food or they're going to purchase their prescription. So when we talk about those 40 plus million people that are food insecure, what that means is that they may have meals sporadically. They may not know if they're going to get another meal or where their next meal is going to come from. And in many cases, they have to choose between childcare and food, diapers and food, as I mentioned earlier, prescriptions and food. So we want to really help them through our network of the 200 member food banks and the 60,000 agencies to fill that void. And we're really working to, big picture, we want to scale and rescue the surplus food from every point in the U.S. supply chain. So when you think of food banks and food rescue, you probably think of the farm and the vegetables and produce, but we're focused on the fork. And, that includes the convenience store industry and the food service industry in general, where that 52 billion pounds of food is wasted every year and could be distributed to those that need it.
So I know you work with some major convenience retailers that a lot here on the Northeast, but some also a little bit closer in the Midwest, like Cumberland Farms. And if I may list some, Come and Go, Jackson's, Loaf and Jug, Quick Trip with a Q, Royal Farms, and Sheets. Now, is it all fresh foods they donate? Is it a mix of fresh and packaged? And I know every retailer is going to be a little different, but in general, how do you receive the food from these convenience stores, and then what happens?
Well, the bulk of the food that's donated consists of ready-to-eat items. So there's wonderful sandwiches, yogurt, and snacks. And it's wonderful that the industry has worked to add more nutritious and grab-and-go food to their offerings. So what we do is work with the C-store main contact and really start with information gathering. So the C-store will provide us with their master store list. And then we take that and match that to our 200-member food banks. So we can determine, for example, you mentioned 3 Square in Las Vegas. We can determine how many C-stores with that particular company are in their service area. And then we take that list and talk with the contact about realistically what that schedule looks like. So is the pickup 2 days a week? Is it 3 days a week? Because what's going to happen is our food bank network is going to match their agency partners with those stores. So they'll reach out to their agency partners, talk about the type of food that can be donated, that can be rescued, and then they'll work on, based on the pounds that the store believes they're able to donate, they'll match the agency. So there are cases where there are more than one agency picking up at a particular store. So then once we have that plan, we help the company develop the food safety standards and the process and the communications with the store. So we really act as an extension of the company's team throughout, because we want this to be successful, and then we want to help test and scale it. So we typically pilot with a couple regions or a couple cities and start the program, and then we learn from that, and we test and scale, a great example is Sheets. We started their pilot a couple years ago, and we're now at about 85% of launching their 560 stores, which means that 560 Sheets stores will be donating their wonderful products, that instead of throwing them away, they'll be donating them to the agencies for their customers to enjoy. And the figures are really staggering. Just in 2017, the 7 companies that you mentioned donated 60 million pounds of safe, wholesome food.
That's amazing.
Think about that. An average meal is 1.2 pounds. So just think of all of the people in the United States that those 7 C-stores helped. It's really fantastic. And of course, we want to grow the program. And as I said, we partner throughout. So once the program is launched, the company is not on their own. We provide monthly reports so we can see, what performance looks like. And we can see by food category what's being donated, which really helps the store from a waste standpoint. And then certainly that helps from a tax donation standpoint as well.
Yeah, and
so we continue that relationship. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just going to tag on to that in terms of looking at the benefits to a store. First off, you're there are a number of benefits, and one I think you touched upon a little bit in talking about our stores are selling better items, more healthy, wholesome items. And when you hear about food insecure, and at the same time we have an obesity epidemic, particularly among the poor, I think there's a little bit of a misperception that how can you be hungry and also not, you could be overweight. And it's because when you are not sure where your next meal is going to come from or how much money you'll have for your next meal, you generally try to focus on things that are calorie dense. They may not necessarily be a salad. They may be something that is just going to fill you up.
Or something that's just easy. It's easy to grab right there, and it's shelf stable, and it lasts a long time, so it sits in the pantry. So
to a certain extent, when groups work with Feeding America, they're really addressing multiple issues. You're addressing the food insecure and the hunger issue in this country, but there's also an element that you might be enhancing somebody's long-term health. And that's great for any community.
Absolutely, and think of children in general. So in the United States, there are 13 million children that are food insecure. So you and I know what it feels like when we're in a meeting longer than planned and we miss lunch. Oh, it's the end of the world if we haven't had anything to eat by 4 o'clock. We miss lunch. Well, here are these kids that are going to school and not able to focus because all they're thinking about is that, they're starving, they're hungry. So a lot of this food that is rescued from C-stores is really wonderful for the school summer lunch programs, the backpack programs. It works really well for the folks, the families that, many working families are food insecure. So the high school student or the mom who's working has that meal that was rescued, that prepackaged fresh meal that they can take to their place of employment or to school that day. So it really, the impact from a dignity standpoint is pretty phenomenal as well, because when we get this product from the C-stores, they have the C-store brand, they're beautifully packaged, and that just makes those people that are receiving the food feel like someone cares about them.
That's such a cool example. There's another one that I heard from one of my daughter's friends, and this doesn't have to do with Feeding America, but just it has to do with, I think what you mentioned was the stigma around, needing to bring food from home and all that. She was at school, and she started a program in her local elementary school where they put a table outside the cafeteria, and all the kids, any kid that had something left that they didn't want to throw away that hadn't been eaten yet, whether it's an apple or a snack, would put it on that table, and then whoever needed it, wanted it, whatever, could take it. Now, it was open to, I don't think she's in a very affluent area, so I think it probably went in some of the directions where we wanted it to go, which was towards those who need it most, or maybe it was just a kid who was just really likes to eat that day. But I think that's just such a beautiful example of people helping other people and just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And that's what I think a lot of these C-stores are doing, and that what Feeding America is doing. And I also wanted to focus on another word that you said, which was safe. It's safe food, so it isn't expired or anything like that, or it hasn't been sitting out too long. It's still good to eat. But then there's also, I can't, you're going to help me here with the name of the law, but there's a law that protects the giver of the food, the C-store or the restaurant. And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
That's right. That's it's a federal law, the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Food Donation Act. So this was implemented in 1996, and it protects you from liability when you donate to a nonprofit organization, protects from civil and criminal liability. It standardizes donor liability exposure, etc. So it protects the company that's donating. But it's important, I think, to mention, too, that our members in the Feeding America network, those 200 food banks, are held to pretty strict guidelines. So we have staff that focus only on compliance. So they meet with our food banks. Food banks complete a rigorous review and inspection about every year and a half. And then also when we're setting up the programs with the C-Store, we also implement, we have a food bank, ServeSafe, which is a brand of food safety training, which I'm sure the industry will be very familiar with. We have a set of guidelines specifically for food banks. And then we'll work with the C-Store to incorporate their food safety guidelines if it's, if they're over and above what's included in the food bank guidelines. So we want to make sure that food that gets to the customer is safe and that they have a good experience with it. So it's very important.
Now, in addition to benefiting the community, and I was even thinking as you were talking earlier about have we been to meetings that you feel hungry and you don't perform as well. And just thinking about, and now there's, I guess, officially the medical directories or some journal has decided that hangry is an actual thing. And you think about it's not karma points. It's about changing somebody's health. It's about changing somebody's mental well-being. There's a lot of benefits here. Now, from the retailer side, are there benefits also that they're able to, that you've seen, whether it's in the convenience industry or others, where they're able to tell a story that we care about the community because we're working with Feeding America, and basically the community appreciates that and recognizes that, and it makes it a little easier to do business in that community?
Oh, absolutely. Fighting hunger resonates deeply with the customers. So customers who have heard about the stores working with Feeding America, it's just had an overwhelming positive response. And a lot of customers, as a result, if there's signage in the store, the customers will get involved and feel inclined to donate at the local food pantry or the food bank. The nice thing about it, too, is it gets associates talking about it. So the store associates are really engaged with the program. They take lots of love and care when they're packaging that food for donation, and they really feel like they've become part of the solution. And not only with helping people who are food insecure, but it's reducing waste from going to the landfill. So it not only helps with hunger issues in their community, but it helps with the environment.
So I also, sort of similar to that, it also helps in the stores too. In NACS magazine coming up in August of 2018, we do a story and we talk to some of the retailers about that are donating to Feeding America about what this did for their stores. And I know one of the individuals talked about how there was less dumpster diving happening at their store, which is what I don't know if they're in a city or they're talking about a rural location, but because then this same retailer was able to say, there's a food agency or a bank or a shelter right around the corner. You can go there and you can get fresh, safe food. You don't have to do this. But so it's helping, that's not a theft issue, but the community in general, just in that regard too.
Absolutely. And think about it. When the agencies and food banks are nonprofit charitable organizations. So when the agency receives these food donations, they can deploy resources, money that was used in purchasing food for their customers, into other programs. So it's really a big picture kind of holistic impact on their community. And especially with, it seems like there are so many C-stores that are located right off of the interstate that happen to be rural communities where they don't have access to that food. So I know that we've had so many agencies that have just been thrilled to work with the C-stores because there's not a lot of surplus in their area from a donation standpoint.
Yeah, and Carolyn and I, we talk a lot about, and part of our jobs, or a big part of our jobs, are really focused on three areas: food, community, and jobs. And we've already talked about food and the benefits there. We've already talked about community and the benefits there. And Shelley, you alluded to some of the important benefits related to store associates. We have unemployment that's around 4% or less. And how do you make your job opportunity stand out among the competition? And when you see, we have examples. NACS had a day where we just worked, anybody who wanted to could find a various community group to work with, and you would see people, whether at our jobs or at other jobs, people will work after hours for free for a community benefit. Now, and if they're at a job where it's just a job, they're out there as soon as the clock says they're out there. So there's also a huge element where it does differentiate you for those associates that are really getting difficult to hang on to because unemployment's so low.
It really does. And, when an employment is being courted by the competitor and they think, well, I really love this food donation program. I love interacting with the agency people that come in, or through this food donation program, we've started a program where our team volunteers at the food bank or the agency. Those are kind of intangibles that are making a long-term impact and really improving the quality of their work life. So through a food donation program with Feeding America, you're helping those associates, not only educating them, but helping them make those connections to the volunteer efforts and opportunities that are there.
So, Shelley, I want to ask one final question, and that's how can retailers get involved? And it's kind of a two-part question. How can they directly get involved with Feeding America, or if they're not a big company that's nationwide or anything, can they go directly to food banks? Can they go to Feeding America? Can they do both? How would we tell our listeners, how can they get started?
Well, our department is part of a retail sourcing organization, supply chain division with Feeding America. So, and I would recommend that they contact our department first, and that department lead is Tony Popillo, and his email address, I'll spell it slowly, is TPUPILLO @feedingamerica.org, or they can call Tony at 312-641-5632. I think it would be better to start with Feeding America, because even if they don't have a footprint nationally, we work with a lot of programs, organizations that have regional store locations. And then if we find that the volume's not there, certainly we can connect them with the local food bank. But generally, we can help work on and scale that program. Also, if there's an interest in, you can contact us if you'd like to volunteer at a food bank or volunteer with Feeding America. We can connect you to those resources. And certainly, if it's if you don't have a lot of waste, congratulations. So you don't want to pursue a food donation program. We're always looking for funds of any amount. $1 donated to Feeding America feeds an average of offers an average of 10 meals. So that's significant. And 98% of the donations that we receive go directly to the people in need. So there are a variety of opportunities to participate. And I'd also recommend visiting our website just to get an overview and more information on some of the statistics we talked about, which is feedingamerica.org. And you can also go on there and map the meal gap. So there's a tool on there, and you can put in your zip code or your state, and you can see what hunger looks like in your community. And I think that would be pretty compelling.
Well, Shelley,
but we are here and ready to support and help develop a plan to really help end hunger. Our goal is to increase from last year's number of 60 million pounds donated from the C-store market to 150 million pounds by 2025. So we need your help.
Well, we are here to help. We are happy to help. We're happy to connect our retailers to you. And Shelley, thank you so much for joining us by phone today. Visit convenience.org/Feeding America to learn more. You have email addresses. You can call us, me or Jeff, and we're happy to put you in touch. And we hope to help you raise that number. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.